One of Ajahn Chah's kind of really vivid images was when he's talking about impermanence. He gave an example of a glass. He had this glass of water. And he said, look at this glass here. He said, this glass is already broken. Everybody's kind of, what? He said, yeah, it's impermanent. It's already broken. It just is waiting for itself, this impermanence to manifest, that's all. Yeah. When you understand it's already broken, then when it breaks, you say, oh, finally. Yeah, you finally manifested your true nature. You see it already is broken. Right? Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. So last week I talked about one of the teachings from the forest tradition, and I should qualify it a little bit because it's really a teaching from the forest tradition as taught by Ajahn Chah. I sort of have presumed that many of the forest teachers teach in a similar way because many of the at least the older generation of teachers, forest teachers in Thailand, had the same teacher, Ajahn Mun, and they, of course, were practicing, in the forest, similar types of teachings, similar types of reflections, contemplations. But of course, every one of them has their own special emphasis. But Ajahn Chah, of course, was a especially gifted teacher, so many of his teachings are quite direct and I would say meaningful and memorable anyway, at least to me. Some of them I heard personally, so last time I talked about the teaching about how suffering or dukkha is our teacher. And even though it's a bit of a hard one for most people, especially in the West, but it's a very, very significant one, an important one, because once one can transform suffering, which most people try and run away from, into a lesson, something to learn from, it's something is transformed. Suffering loses its sting. We're not so frightened of it anymore. Can even, I wouldn't say, well, maybe, sometimes even welcome it. Yeah? Didn't I guess being masochistic or welcome suffering? I mean, enough, just a little bit of suffering, a little bit. As I mentioned, it's more like just stepping outside our comfort zone. And if we're, basically if we're suffering, then we are, our action, speech, and mind are somehow going against the flow of Dhamma. If you're really in the flow of Dhamma, you wouldn't suffer. Simple as that. So when suffering happens, it's like a little red light flashing and saying, you're out of harmony with Dhamma now, so, how to get back in harmony with it. And sometimes just recognizing, oh, here I am, kind of running away from suffering, where suffering is part of life. Just being able to open up to it, receive it, can already set in a certain amount of relaxation and harmonizing with Dhamma then. So another teaching of the forest tradition, or Ajahn Chah anyway, another one he mentioned quite often was that everything is impermanent, anicca. And this was even though we know it intellectually, many of us don't really understand about suffering too much, unless you've sort of experience with life, and you realize that you can learn a lot of lessons from when you fail or suffer. But impermanence, I think most people realize to a certain degree, at least intellectually, yeah, everything's impermanent. But of course, the real test of understanding impermanence is one has a direct experience of it. So one needs to contemplate. And this is, it's in most of the meditation instructions. If you remember the teachings about mindfulness, developing mindfulness, first there is the awareness of breathing. It's the first instruction. And then to contemplate the arising of the breath process, passing of the breath process, and the arising and the passing of it. Technically speaking, just being aware of the breathing is an exercise in focused attention in samatha meditation. But when you turn your awareness to the arising and passing of the breath, then it's transformed into vipassana, or insight meditation. It's a slight shift in awareness from observing the breath as a fixed object, as some kind of steady or more reliable point of reference, to arising and passing. But it has a significant difference. Now we're tuning in more to one of the fundamental principles of Dhamma, the kind of reflections of insight meditation, permanence, unsatisfactoriness, and no permanent self. That is most direct. And people can read this, they know about it intellectually, but when we were contemplating and reflecting upon these themes within the context of our own life, that you see it. You can say, oh yeah, you intellectually say, oh, the body's impermanent. Then you notice, the breath arising and passing, arising and passing. You begin a direct experience of this body is just arising and passing. If you don't breathe in, the breath doesn't arise for a certain amount of time, I don't know, a few minutes, you're dead. If you don't breathe out, after a few minutes, you're dead too. Huh? You can die on an out breath, or just not breathing in. Well, breathe out and don't breathe in, I guess. That's the end of life. And then noticing, being aware of other sensations in the body as they rise and they pass. Begin to get a direct experience of this body being a living organism. It's coming together momentarily and passing away again. It's not some fixed object, as we normally would think of it. Most of us think of the body as, it's pretty well the same every day, except if you have an illness or something, and dramatic changes. But when you're noticing the subtle arising and passing away of different sensations in the body, not just breathing, but the heart beating, the blood being pumped through the veins. When you eat some food and can be aware of it being digested, food being excreted away at the end of the meal. You're aware of these particular sensations, and you begin to get a direct experience, the body being an impermanent entity, not so solid, not so tangible or solid as we imagine it to be. And then, of course, the various activities we do, and especially if your body gets somewhat injured, scratched, going for a walk in the bush, and lots of scratchy things in Australia here. You get scratched, and your nice smooth skin gets roughed up or even punctured, and just having a bath and a shower in the evening, washing all the dirt away from the body. Yeah, a lot of it is just dead skin, actually. A lot of the dirt in the body, dead skin, or sweat come out of the body. Yeah. But we're aware of these particular changes that go on, and these changes are necessary. If your body wasn't a living thing, one of the definitions of one of the kind of analogies or images they give, if your body is dead like a lifeless log, yeah, rather than being a tree growing, it's a lifeless log. It's cut off at the root. But if your body, is a lifeless log, it's just like that, it's not alive anymore. It's dead. It's decaying, completely going away, fading away. It has to be changing like this. You have to take in food and digest it to get the energy to sustain the body, and you have to go to the toilet. Yeah, you say, "Oh, I don't like to go to the toilet. I think I'll just give up going to the toilet." You probably die then, huh? You die of constipation, probably. I'm just too tired of breathing. I'll just quit breathing today, Quit drinking water and having to urinate. And you can have all these ideals if you like, but then that means the end of the body. It has to do these things to maintain itself, to sustain itself. And of course, it's more obvious perhaps to observe the changes in the body. The body is always arising and passing and changing. But then you begin to observe your feelings, as in the discourse on mindfulness, developing mindfulness of feelings. Most of us just kind of focus on pleasant feeling. We try to ignore the unpleasant feeling. But if you become aware of the range of feeling, then you need the whole range: pleasant, unpleasant, neutral, pleasant, unpleasant, neutral, pleasant, unpleasant, neutral. Can't have one without the other. When the pleasant passes away, it becomes neutral or unpleasant. And fortunately, most of us, the unpleasant doesn't persist forever, for periods of time, but it changes. Then the states of mind. We have these memories. Even memories are impermanent. They don't seem like it so much. You can remember certain things from your early life, and it seems to be the same thing again. But if you look at more in detail, more carefully, you forget certain details. You begin to forget over the years. Maybe the general picture is the same, but look at the details and start to get a bit fuzzy. People think they recall their memories. They recall them. Just like on a computer screen, you recall your previous file. But the reality is you recollect a memory. There's a few very strong images there, pictures, feelings, emotions, whatever. You that kind of a trigger. Then you recollect the details around it. And each time you recollect it, a few things get left out, get distorted. Sometimes other impressions get which are stronger, get kind of transferred onto it, and you begin to wonder, was that really what happened, or was it my imagination, or this is somebody else I'm thinking about, got mixed in with it. And one of the hardest ones, of course, is our old habits, our opinions, our views, our usual way of looking at things. That's when Ajahn Chah would frequently kind of, somebody says something, and he said, well, like one of the, we say in English, impermanent, translate anicca usually as impermanent, but how it manifests in everyday life is uncertainty. So they have a very succinct word in Thai, mai ne. It's uncertain. So somebody says, oh yeah, it should be, it's like this. Ajahn Chah would say, mai ne, uncertain. You think I think it was like that yesterday, but today it's different again. It's uncertain. How many times have we been, have our expectations been disappointed? We expected it to be a certain way, and it isn't. Mai ne, uncertain. Rather than be disappointed, you just say, oh yeah, of course. That's the way of reality. That's the way of Dhamma. It is uncertain, really. As much as you don't want to accept it, it is uncertain. Your body is uncertain. You can't rely upon it. You can be feeling healthy and strong today, and tomorrow you're going to be knocked out, be sick. You say, well, it's not fair. This shouldn't happen to me. The body is uncertain. You can't rely upon it. And we still get surprised. Even though we, intellectually know it, but still get surprised because we don't really understand it. Haven't really penetrated it yet. How many times have we, expected something and then remember, uncertain, don't have strong expectations. We have them, we have them because, there is a certain pattern to life. Yeah. Very likely there'll be a dawn tomorrow morning, very likely. Yeah. But but uncertain. Yeah. If no dawn happens tomorrow morning, don't be totally surprised. Of course, then I have to miss my breakfast, and then it's a big problem. There isn't a dawn tomorrow. You won't be alone. It'll be a lot of us involved in it. But very likely it'll happen tomorrow, and a little bit later than this morning because, the earth is still changing, still tilting, winter's coming on. And even though the weather forecast said a certain thing, but uncertain. Yeah. This morning was supposed to be clear, 5% chance of rain, and it was raining. It's just uncertain. So instead of being upset about it and saying it shouldn't be this way, the weather forecast is lying to me, and just take your umbrella. So for most people, the whole sense of a self is based upon permanence, isn't it? When you think of yourself, you think, well, there's some continuity anyway there. I've still got the same name, although I had changed my name actually. My passport is my same name as I was born, but I kind of played a little trick and took the Buddhist name. Not on my passport though. So I got to stop and think, who am I? For official business, I got to be a certain person who has a passport in that name, but we have a certain sense of a continuity of self. When somebody asks you who you are, you have this memory of, oh yes, Canadian and a certain age and been here, been there, and blah 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 blah. You pull out your CV. But the reality of it is, like people ask me, where are you from? And I usually say to them, when? No, they say, where are you from? I said, when? I was born in Canada, I lived in Thailand, I lived in England and New Zealand and Australia, and when do you want to know where I came from? Where did you come from? And where did I come from in the year 2000? Switzerland I came from. Where did you come from in the year 1982? Came from Thailand. Of course, I usually want to know where I'm born, I guess, but I've been out of Canada so long, I even forgot where I just can't think of where I was born. It's way back in the back of my memory somewhere, you know. To say where you come from, I say, well, I came from Australia now. Before that, New Zealand. Because the sense of self is based upon a certain degree of, belief in permanence, even though intellectually we know it's changing, but we still rely upon this certain degree of continuity or permanence to our life. I assume that I have the same job when I go back to work on Monday, and and live in the same place and all this, but so we usually have to contemplate impermanence. We have to bring it up into our consciousness and reflect upon it or give attention to it. Because our normal sense of self is attending to permanence. Who are you? I'm that person. They don't want to. If somebody asks me where you come from, I say, well, it's no. Who are you? I say, who are you? I say, well, I'm a breath. I had some porridge for breakfast this morning. I had this and that. They didn't want to know what you're made up of. I'm made up of cells, and I'm made up of blood, and they want to know, who are you? I am this person, this particular individual. But what are you really? Who am I really? I am, blood and hair and, 32 parts of the body. No, that's too complicated. Just tell me you are. I want your name. And by constantly referring to that, that constant identity, as it were, you forget sometimes. You forget that it's impermanent. Even identity. When you look at it, identity, well, it's changing all the time because you are learning new things. You're forgetting certain things. So even your sense of identity is changing. But it's too risky for the government to say that. You got to be a statistic in the census roll or something or whatever. But that's the way of Dhamma, is that this is constantly changing. But once if we contemplate this, we get some direct experience of it. We can live with that, live in harmony with Dhamma. But also we can also, as it were, kind of reference the practical reality of it. Somebody asked you, who are you? You don't have to say, oh, I'm a breath right now. You could ask, okay, are they ready for it? Are they ready for that answer, or do they just want to know my name? or what religion are you, or something, or you look like this. What do they want to know? And they say, who are you? But if you believe in that, I am this person and have to defend this particular temperament and personality, you have to defend the Canadian political system or whatever, or the particular legislation in Canada or something, or then it's you find yourself clutching onto something which does not really have much substance to it. Even say, even rely upon a place to live. Yeah, we saw how this. Well, some of us who were here in the bushfires. I must admit, when my hut burned down, it was I don't know. I would say traumatic, but it was upsetting. Even though I know, yes, things are impermanent. Yes, yes, yes. All these years now, but somebody sent us the news saying, oh, that one of the buildings burned down in Buddha, and they thought it was the Sangha house. It was a Sangha house, so they set a picture of it, and this building was on fire, blazing away, and I thought, that isn't the Sangha house. That's my house. And my heart just dropped. What? My house? Of course, it was just one of the buildings. It wasn't even my house, but my stuff is there. Yeah, and they're going to say, "Oh well, it's impermanent. It's impermanent." Yeah, but it hurts. That's my stuff. Even though I say, "Well, it's impermanent," but for years I collected this stuff. Even though it wasn't so much. It wasn't like somebody who had their whole life, all their life's possessions in their house. Some people did have that. They had 5 minutes to flee out of their house. Couldn't even take their photographs with them or anything. So at least I had my passport and my computer and left my favorite socks behind, but still haven't got them back again, but they're very rare socks. My favorite fluffy hat. It was a hot season, so I never thought of bringing my fluffy hat with me. But next time I will. We don't really know. We hang on to these things, and we get habituated to them. Just assume they're going to be there, and then they're gone. They were disappointed, rather than saying, "Oh, there is impermanence. There, I just had a really, a really deep message there, like a heavenly messenger talking about showing me impermanence right there. Even slapped me in the face. It was so shocking." Thank you. But the contemplation of impermanence, it happens at different levels, of course. One is to know about it. I mean, how many people even know to contemplate impermanence? They spend all their life accumulating things or building up an identity and investing in things, investing in material things, and then even though they intellectually know that they're going to break down, your car is going to break down, your house is going to fall apart eventually, or has also break down bits and pieces, but then we're shocked and we're surprised. My car broke down. Why is that? One of Ajahn Chah's kind of really vivid images was when he's talking about impermanence. He gave an example of a glass. He had this glass of water, and he said, "Look at this glass here." He said, "This glass is already broken." Everybody's kind of, "What?" He said, "Yeah, it's impermanent. It's already broken. It just is waiting for itself. This impermanence to manifest. That's all. Yeah. When you understand it's already broken, then when it breaks, you say, 'Oh, finally, yeah, you finally manifested your true nature.' You see it already is broken. Because you contemplate impermanence so deeply, you see everything is broken already. Yeah. So when it finally does manifest, you say, 'Oh, thank you very much. You finally have expressed your true nature.' But most people wouldn't say that, would they? Their glass breaks and they say, 'Oh no, I have to get another one. Oh, this is unfair. Yeah, this is I must have some bad karma.' Because they still have a mind of permanence. See? If you really understand impermanence, then when something breaks, oh, well, of course, perfectly natural. It's already broken. I remember once I was staying in this temple up in northern Thailand. We were taking this journey down this river, and then we stopped for the night in this Burmese temple. And it was I think it was Loy Krathong, I think it was. It was one of the festival days. So the place was, all the villagers came to the temple. Then in Loy Krathong, they put it means to float the candle down the river, you see. So the villagers all came to the temple. It was really packed full of people. And the abbot was there, and we were sitting up at the front. 3 monks, I think it was 3 of us, were traveling together. And then the abbot kind of made a signal to this young man at the back there and said, "Ring the bell, ring the gong," he said. "We're going to begin the ceremony. Ring the gong." So this young man stood up, very proud. He'll be the bell ringer, see. And he went up to the bell, the gong. It was the Burmese gongs, they're just a big kind of brass, very flat brass thing. Looked like a bell on the outside, or the image of it, but it's very flat. He picked up the wooden hammer, and he wound up, and he banged the bell, but he only hit the side of it. He banged this gong. The thing spun around and broke and fell on the floor. Everybody burst out laughing. This man was so proud, this young man, and he broke the bell, disaster. This bell probably came all the way from Burma, over the mountains to the Golden Triangle, to this Thai village, this Burmese village in Thailand. Yeah. And everybody just burst out laughing. There was a couple of European tourists there, this French couple, and they said, afterwards they said, "That was the best lesson in Buddhism I ever had," she said. If that had been a Catholic church and the bell had broken, everybody looking up for God striking thunderbolts at them or something. But the Buddhists could just burst out laughing. Oh, there's a real example of impermanence. Even the sacred bell broke. That was a real Dhamma teaching there. So the contemplation of impermanence, it's usually has to be developed, worked on. That when you start to pay attention, starting off with your breathing perhaps, breath arising and passing, constantly. Then you begin to notice around you, other things are arising and passing. The falling leaves. Oh yes, leaves are falling now. Oh yes, the skin is getting old and not quite so beautiful anymore. Getting wrinkled. Instead of looking in the mirror and saying, "Oh no, I'm getting old," say, "Oh, there is an example of impermanence right in front of my face." Yeah. Then you begin to recognize it and see it. The Buddha's not telling us that this, to look at this reality, that because it's artificial. He's just saying it's there all the time. Things are impermanent all the time. It's an ultimate reality. We just don't notice it, that's all. Even solid, so-called solid things. Yeah, this carpet's been here for many years now, but it's slowly rotting away. Some things have a very longer lifetime. Some things have a very short lifetime, like the breath. The breath is quite short, But this brass gong here, it could last a long time, unless somebody hits it the wrong way. If you're contemplating impermanence, it's better to try to observe something which is little bit shorter life. I studied geology, and in geology you talk about geological time rather than even a human lifetime or a day or a week or something. You got to think about hundreds of millions of years. Hundreds of millions of years ago, this place here, a lot of this dirt here was in Central Australia, and it washed down over hundreds of millions of years. They say the Sydney Basin, has it's something like how many kilometers deep? 10 kilometers deep or something of sand, washed down from the interior of Australia over 700 million years. And we would look at it and say, well, this is like it's always been here, it's permanent. It's so solid, it's so permanent. It's been here so long. It's here before me. Must be pretty permanent. But when we begin to recognize impermanence, one thing is it's very liberating, because when you bring it back to your own experiences, you can change. Even though you say, "Oh, I have these old habits and things, these habit tendencies, and I have my karma, must be my bad karma. I can't meditate or something." It can change. Your body, your actions, your speech, your mind, they do change. They can change. They are changeable. They even find now that old people can learn new things. There used to be a saying that you can't teach an old dog new tricks. Well, it's not right. It's just harder to learn when you're an old dog, that's all. The old dog, it's harder to learn new tricks, but you still can. Talk about neural plasticity now. Your brain is more plastic than it is like rock, is like concrete, It is changeable. It's best when it comes to our old habits. That's what, you notice impermanence, slowly, maybe because they are, we've dealt with our habits through the eyes of permanence. They get more and more fixed. Then you begin to see impermanence more and more alive in your life. Oh yes, even your habits can change. And then when you understand that, then you allow them to change too. There's a certain liberating effect then. You'll be liberated from your old habits, which is, the Buddha realized that, otherwise you're a prisoner of your previous actions, your vipaka, and you can't be enlightened then. All the arahants, they started off as an ordinary worldly being. They had these worldly attitudes, but through their practice, the contemplation of impermanence, they were able to drop them, let them go. So that their whole being can be transformed from an unenlightened being to an enlightened one, despite their previous actions, despite their previous karma, And even in some of them, even very dramatic, like Angulimala. He apparently had killed 999 people. So he had very, very bad karma. But the Buddha realized he still had a spark of goodness in him. So the Buddha taught him, gave him a direct teaching. Buddha himself taught Angulimala, about the way to practice. And he had a deep insight. And all that accumulations, bad karma, bad activities, from being somebody who was a terrifying and a well-known murderer, became an arahant. See, how can that be? Even though here I am, I'm a very peaceful person, I can't be an arahant. But here's this murderer who could be an arahant. How's that possible? Because of his penetrating insight into impermanence. He can identify with himself being a murderer, maybe, But because the Buddha gave him special teaching, the Buddha said, I've stopped. Apparently this Angulimala was chasing the Buddha, try and chop his head off. And the Buddha kept ahead of him all the time. And he said, why don't you stop so I can kill you? And the Buddha said, I've already stopped. Yeah, because he stopped greed, aversion, delusion, right? His body was still alive, he's still thinking, but the defilements of greed, aversion, delusion were stopped. And then he told us to Angulimala, and Angulimala, right, that's the right kind of stopping. Yeah? When you stop the defilements. Then he had the insight to be let it go. It was transformed into an arahant. Yeah. So it depends upon the quality of that, investigation, that insight. There's one of the scriptures that talk about the different kinds of gradations of merit, of punya. Like the story about a Brahmin who did this great sacrifice. But the Buddhist said, no, there is greater sacrifices. This was a physical. He had some animals killed or something, or he had some ghee burned or something rather. But the Buddha said, oh no, that's there's much better ways to make good karma or merit, punya. And he said the Buddha that it follows this pattern basically of dana, sila, bhavana. Generosity, morality, meditation. So the highest kind of generosity, is it starts off with being generous, making offerings to somebody with the right view, and then it goes through the whole, the Sotapanna, Sakadagami, and Anagami, and Arahant, to give offerings to a Buddha. Then from all the food offerings, it goes on to the highest form of merit is to build a monastery for the Sangha. You offer food to the monastic order, and that sustains the body for a day or even 3 days maybe. But you build a monastery for the Sangha, it sustains the Sangha, the shelter and place to live for maybe 100 years or so. And then there's morality. First of all is to take refuge in the Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha, and then to keep the 5 precepts. For one's, ideally for one's whole life. It depends upon how much you can keep it, the amount of merit you gain, you see. But the highest form of merit is through meditation practice. And the second highest meditation practice is to be able to develop metta bhavana, friendliness meditation. For the time, as they say, for the time it takes to milk a cow. Anybody milked a cow lately? How long does that take? Anybody ever milk the cow? How long does it take? 20 minutes. 20 minutes? Mm-hmm. Wow, you're slow, I think, aren't you? Without the machine. Yeah, okay. Yeah. I think it means by hand, yeah. In the Buddhist time, didn't have machines, so. So 20 minutes of metta bhavana is the second highest form of merit. But the highest form of merit is to be able to develop, to experience impermanence for just a finger snap. So take your pick, which is easier. Milking a cow or snapping your finger. Of course, I'd presume that this is have an experience of anicca, of impermanence. Probably is it's a profound, it's a very, very deep insight. Be transformative, not just a little thought. Oh yeah, and things are impermanent, and probably developing metta bhavana for the time it takes to milk a cow. It probably is being in metta jhana, in the absorption of friendliness. But sometimes, if we're reflecting, contemplating impermanence, even at sort of an intellectual level, or trying to experience the arising and passing of the breathing, for example, if we develop that, then sometimes the mind just comes together and, We get a real insight, profound insight. The stories, especially in the Zen stories, of some monk was meditating for 20, 30 years, and then he's out walking in the forest, and he hears a bamboo break open or something. Suddenly, impermanence. Yeah. His mind was so developed in meditation, though. Then this particular event, his mind was totally collected and totally absorbed in that. We had a brilliant and very, very penetrating insight then. Whereas somebody else's mind, not very developed, they hear a bamboo break open, they're frightened or something. Yeah. Or sometimes just seeing, maybe your mind is very peaceful in meditation, and then you notice a leaf fall. Oh yes, there's everything's falling. Yeah. Suddenly you have this very simple experience, but due to the concentration or focus of your mind, has a profound impact upon you. One of the, especially in Vancouver, where I lived, the weather changes very quickly. Also in New Zealand, being an island and you're close to the sea, the weather changes very quickly. So I could contemplate the changing clouds, cloud patterns. Always changing. I mean, some like today too. It was sunny, then it was cloudy, and then sunny and cloudy, and you just get used to the sunshine, and it's gone. And then the rain comes in, and then the Buddha gave specific instructions how to contemplate. How do you contemplate impermanence? The most direct way, I guess you'd say, is to contemplate impermanence, or the most comprehensive way. Comprehensive, say that. Comprehensive way is to contemplate impermanence of the 5 groups of grasping: body, feelings, memories, sankharas, thinking, thought process, and consciousness. Or I define them, and my own way of defining them is not body, but embodying. I use the verb form because to remind people that these things are changing. They aren't things. There isn't a body here. There is the 4 elements are embodying for this particular lifetime, that's all. The 4 elements: earth, fire, water, air. Or you can say, there's breath, there's breath, there's food, there's warmth. These elements are being embodied, are embodying right here for now. Yeah. And life is sustained then. When these pass away, the air breath passes away, food passes away, warmth passes away, no more sustaining a body anymore. It's not embodying anymore. The 4 elements start to dissipate, start to break up. Memory is recognizing, feelings, recognizing, and then sankharas are it's volition and habits. So it is willing and habiting. Not habits, which are solid, which are like a noun, but habiting. We have these certain tendencies which are not permanent. They do change too. If we allow them to. We can see them as changeable processes, habit tendencies. Maybe we learn that some of these things are not very helpful. So we have to let them go. Even though they have a certain persistence to them, but you can, try to release them, try to step out of them, try to release your grasping of them. And then knowing, consciousness. It's just knowing about things. Yeah. Usually we know something and we try to fix it in our mind as being a certain thing and give it a label, and just knowing. It's knowing, and it's a changeable process. It's not I know, but it's a knowing process. It's changing because, if you change your consciousness, you change your state of mind, for example, with concentration, different kind of knowing. Sometimes that knowing is a very peaceful knowing, for example. Other times it's very fuzzy and, and it's full of ideas and things and interpretations. We have to know what these are, 5 groups of grasping. This is the 5 things which constitute our world, the world of a human being. That's where our grasping is, where our holding on to things as being permanent is. Our body and the feelings and the memories and the way of thinking. And when we begin to contemplate the arising of them and passing away of them, the rising, passing away of them. And gradually, then the so-called body recognizes changing processes, becomes lighter and lighter, and your thinking process, you can begin to recognize, you don't need to keep thinking, remembering these things. There's a certain liberation in it then, liberating influence of impermanence, because then we're now tuning into the way of Dhamma. That's the way things really are. Sometimes it can be a little bit frightening sometimes that, your world is kind of, floating away, rising and passing, but that's the way it really is. And when you can understand that and receive that, and it's very liberating too. Things arise and pass away, rise and pass away. And in the chanting for the funerals, it says the nature of things is to rise and pass away. And in their passing, there is peace. Imagine if you don't have to hold on to things. Yeah, your hut can burn down and it's just smoke and and a few memories of things that I lost. But now it's just smoke and ash, gone back to the 4 elements, just where it came from. So it can rest in peace. So there's a very liberating effect in contemplating impermanence. And you can recognize, much as you try and grab and hold on to, you're wasting your time. It's all passing away, like the river flowing. The river is flowing down to the sea, and you can stand there and try and stop it. Stand in the water, make a dam or whatever, but it's going to keep flowing. So maybe you can begin to flow with it then. And then your life is a lot more light and fluid then. You flow with the Dhamma, the way things really are. And in that there is great peace. So hopefully you begin to recognize that for yourself, realize that for yourself, and be that peace for yourself then.